Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is Nedarim daf Ayin Chet. Yep, today's January 11th, and today's daf though is daf Ayin Chet 78 of Masechet Nedarim. Our Mishnah that we learned a few days ago at this point discussed the ability of a father or husband to revoke a neder on Shabbat, and then in the Gemara we quoted a Mishnah that noted that Nedarim could also be annulled on Shabbat. And again, the difference between annulment and revocation is what is done by a father or husband. Father for a girl who's under 12 and a half, a husband for his full wife, or in the case of Nedarim Me'urasa, the 12 to 12 and a half girl who is both still a minor and only done the initial betrothal step, the Erisin or Kedushin step, and has not done the Nesuin step. So then both the father and the husband are necessary to revoke the vow, and that's revocation. Annulment is what is done when one goes to a Chacham or to a Beit Din. So when we do our Hatarat Nedarim on before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, so then that is a reference to, that's what that is a reference to. That is the annulment of vows. So let's take a look. So now, we've discussed some of the rules regarding each of these topics, and now we're going to pick up with the Gemara 3 lines from the bottom of Ayin Zayin Amabet on 77b. With towards the end of the line, it says Amar Rabbi Yochanan. That's where we're going to pick up, and that is going to, and Rabbi Yochanan is going to note that the rules are different. Not the reason that we've been calling one revocation, hafara, and one hatara or annulment is because the rules are different. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan tells us Chacham she'amar b'lshon Baal, if a Chacham, if you ask a wise person to, it's a person who is learned in the halachot of this topic, and for all intents and purposes, we don't have such a Chacham today because many understand that it also includes some aspect of smicha, from Moshe Rabbeinu, or some sort of formal smicha that we don't have. We have an only informal smicha. So that chacham is going to use the language of the husband, and let's take uval she'amar bilshon chacham, or alternatively a husband who uses the language of a chacham. So lo amar klum, he hasn't said anything. And if we take a look at the end of the third to last line of the Ran, we'll take a look at the first 2 Rans here, and the Ran helps us understand, what does it mean, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Chacham she'amar b'lshon Baal? What is that language of a husband? Now I know if he says, listen, in mufarlayach, that is what a husband is supposed to say when he is revoking the vow of his wife, and similarly a father for the daughter. And continuing on in the second to last line of the Ran at the bottom of Ayin Zayin Amabet. And similarly, when it comes to a husband who uses the language of a chacham, what is the language of the chacham? Shamar mutter. A chacham is supposed to say mutter. Mutter meaning permitted. It is mutter life. Okay, and now the Ran helps us understand why we use these languages. So lashon Baal mufarishu b'kasuv. So when it comes to the language of mufarlayach, that mufar is the language that is said in the Torah. Dahainu lashon hafara, because the Torah references to hafara. The lashon chacham. But what about the lashon chacham? How is that? How do we know what that language is? Dahavi mutarlayach, which is mutarlayach. Mashmalei, the implication of it is from Midiksiv lo yachil dvaro. What we have a lesson in the Torah that says that one should not violate his word, that one should not profane his word. Kolomar lo yased dvarav chulim. You shouldn't make your words profane, meaning that if you say something is kodesh, you can't then say, no, it's not kodesh. You don't have the ability to take it away. Vidarshinan, and what is our drasha? Our drasha is that you can't do it for yourself. but somebody else can do it for you. And so aval acherim mochel love, others can do it for you. She'osin oto chulin, and they can make something chulin for you. Ubechulin mutter shayach, and when it comes to the language of chulin, then permitted is an appropriate language, because if it's not chulin, if it's kodesh, then it's usher to you. So mutter is the right language, l'meimer bahu, to say with respect to it. And now we turn over to Ayin Chedam and Aleph, and we'll come back to Ayin Zayman Bet in the Gemara in a moment. And the Quran continues, Ubi Yerushalmi. In Yerushalmi, not only does it say that you should use the language of mutter life, but it offers an alternative language. That in addition, the Chacham should say, or the Beit Din should say, Ein kan neder, ein kan shvua, that there's no neder here and there's no shvua. And if this sounds familiar, you're absolutely right, because this is the exact language that we say in Hataras Nedarim. I think we may actually say Ein kan lo neder, lo shvua, etc. So we only say the Ein kan once. But the bottom line, but the point is that we're saying there is no oath here. There's no neder, there's no shvua, etc. The garam hasam bal she'amar bilshon chacham, the chacham she'amar bilshon bal lo amar klum. That also, I'm sorry, the garas hasam. That the language over there is again also as it is here. That the language of a chacham can't be used by a baal, and the language of a baal can't be used by a chacham. Each one has to say the language that's appropriate to him. Habal omer mufer layach, v'hazaken omer ein kan neder, ein kan shvua. Okay, and so that's what the Gemara over there says. So clearly, the implication is that the language for a chacham or a zaken is ein kan neder, ein kan shvua. V'lefizeh mashmali delishna demifer shayach mikan be'elach. So what is the relevance for all of this? So the Ran says that in his view, the language of mufer is from now going forward, whereas the lishna de mutter, the davar shahaya mutter miikaro. And when we say something is permitted, it is permitted from the beginning. And so as a result, what we're saying when you ask the chacham, you're basically saying that the whole thing wasn't valid. And that's why we can understand better the debate about regret and a Pesach and an opening and some level of mistake, because if in fact we can utilize regret or a mistake, well, bottom line is what we're really saying is that it shouldn't have been made in the first place. The thou shouldn't have been made in the first place, and so as a result, we're going to treat it once the chacham or the Beit Din says it's mutter for you. We're going to treat it as if you never made it. On the other hand, the husband doesn't have that power. The husband only has the power to say, listen, it's not a vow for you from this point on. Okay, so now we're going to utilize a pasuk at the very beginning of no, but then I'm sorry, we didn't go back to the Gemara. So all right, so now we're going to prove what we said. The Tanya, so now we're one second line up in the middle of the line on Ayin Zion on the bed at the bottom, from the bottom. So the Tanya Zeh Davar, that when we had the pasuk in Bamidbar Lamed pasuk bet, Parak Lamed pasuk bet, that says Zeh Davar, that this is the thing that Hashem commanded. The full pasuk is Vaydaber Moshe el Roshei Hamatos L'bnei Yisrael Lemor Zeh Hadavar Asher Tziva Hashem. So let's take a look. What is this is the thing, meaning somehow it's specific. Hechacham matir ve'ein bal matir. When it comes to hatara, when it comes to permission and annulment, so that is a chacham's job. A husband doesn't have that ability. Sheyachol, I might have thought chacham esheim meifir matir, that a chacham who cannot revoke has the ability to annul. So Baal Shemefer Eno Din Shematir, shouldn't he certainly have the ability to annul? So Talmud Lomar V'Zeh Davar. So that's the point is the Zeh Davar is telling us that It's only in this case. That's what the implication of the word zadavar are. Chacham matir ve'ein bal matir. That a chacham has the ability to annul, but a husband does not. And Tanya Edith, there's another brisa that says the exact opposite. Zadavar bal mefer ve'ein chacham mefer. A husband has the ability to revoke, but the chacham does not. Sheyachol, that I might have thought ma bal she'ein matir mefer, that a husband who lacks the ability to annul can be mefer. A chacham shematir eino din shemefer. A chacham who has the ability to annul, so then he should certainly have the ability to revoke. So Talmud Lomar zadavar bal mefer ve'ein chacham mefer. So that's the two sides of the coin. And you might say, well, 1 second, how do we work out the fact? It seems like like these prices are in direct conflict, because one seems to say that the chacham is stronger, and one seems to say that the Baal is stronger. But it depends on how one views it. The Baal is stronger because he has a connection to the matter. He's he's the husband, and so as a result, the husband, from a relationship perspective, you might think will have greater ability. On the other hand, when one looks at what actually can be done, Hatara is clearly a greater ability than Hafara. So depending on which view you take, that can be the understanding of the analysis associated with these two brises. All right, so now that we've referenced a one brisa that has taught us a lesson from Zehadavar, it turns out that Zehadavar is also used in connection with the in Vayikra, in connection with the prohibition of slaughtering sacrifices outside the Beit HaMikdash. You're not allowed to slaughter a sacrifice outside the Beit HaMikdash, and so that prohibition also says Zehadavar. Specifically, it says Daber el Aharon ve'el banav ve'el kol b'nei Yisrael v'amarta aleihem zehadavar asher tzivah Hashem lemor, and then it goes on to tell you what the prohibition is. Okay, so that's the pasuk, and so now we're going to create a gzeira shava between the two. So Ne'emar kan zehadavar, it says in the connection with the regarding vows, it's Nedarim. It says Zehadavar. That's the first pasuk in Meseches Matos. V'ne'amar lahalan Zehadavar b'shchutei chutz, and it also says Zehadavar in connection with slaughtering sacrifices outside the Beit HaMikdash. So let's make a gzeira shava. Ma b'shchutei chutz Aharon uvana v'chol b'nei Yisrael. So as I mentioned, the pasuk says Daber el Aharon ve'el banav ve'el kol b'nei Yisrael. You're supposed to speak to everyone. There's an everyone component to this, to the commandment. So af parshas Nedarim, Aaron uvana v'chol Yisrael. So we also have to apply this everyone component. It's really the key here is the Kol Yisrael piece. We have to apply that Kol Yisrael piece also in connection to vows. So how do we connect it to Nedarim? Umakan Rashi Hamatos, af lahalan Rashi Hamatos. And similarly, when we have the leaders in connection with the rules regarding Nedarim, we have to have something about leaders with respect to the sacrificing, with respect to slaughtering sacrifices outside the Beit HaMikdash. So we haven't yet said what that is, but now we're going to do that detail. So that's what the brisa says. We have to go in both directions, but it doesn't tell us the specifics. So let's take a look, and the Gemara will explain it. But Parshas Nedarim L'mai Hilcha. So what law do we have in connection with Nedarim? We have Amr of Acha Bar Yaakov, meaning what do we learn from all of Israel? So Amar Rav Acha Bar Yaakov lahachshir shlosha hedyotot. What this tells us is that not only can you ask an individual chacham to annul your vow, but you also have the ability to ask 3 regular people who sit down together in a Beit Din. Well, 1 second. Well, what do you learn from the fact that in the discussion of Nedarim, it specifically says Rashi Hamatos? Rav Chisda explains the Isem Rabbi Yochanan. Some say it's Rabbi Yochanan. The Yachid Mumcha. It's a point of the reference to the leaders in the beginning of Parshas Matos is to tell us that a leader has the ability to annul the vow. So as a result, from this Zera Shava, we see that not only can an individual leader annul the vow, but we can have 3 regular people can annul the vow. All right. So what about in the other direction? Yeah, well, from the fact that we have Kol Yisrael, exactly. From Kol Yisrael that we have, both of them are referenced in connection with Zeh Davar. So just as by Zeh Davar in connection with Shchutei Chutz, it's Kol Yisrael. So too, even though it doesn't say Kol Yisrael over there, we're going to say it says we're going to learn Kol Yisrael over here as well.
Who's the leader?
So who are the leaders? Those are the rabbis who have learned all of the Torah and know all the mitzvos and know how to be good leaders. So those are the leaders that we're talking about. And so one good leader can annul the vow, but it takes 3 regular people to do the same thing. So all right. So now what about in the other direction? So we've explained what we do with Rashei Amatos and what we do with Kol Yisrael when it comes to Nedarim. Well, what about in connection with the mitzvah of Shchutei Chutz? What do we do with those 2 lines for there? So Rashei Amatos b'Shchutei Chutz l'mai help. So what does the Rashei Amatos come to tell us with respect to slaughtering sacrifices outside the Beit HaMikdash? So Amar Rav Sheshes Lamar Sheyesh She'ela B'Hakdesh, that it tells us that when it comes to something that you have sanctified, you have the ability to also ask for that to be annulled. And essentially, that is a vow of consecration. As we've seen throughout this, our Nedarim are effectively analogized to a vow consecrating something. And that's why when we make a ned there with respect to some object, that object becomes prohibited to us because we treat it like it's a korban. And the Ron explains here that this gives us a really powerful tool for getting out of the problem of Shchutei Chutz. Lomar sheyesh, if we take a look at second to last of the narrow lines in the Ron, Lomar sheyesh she'ela b'hekdesh. So this teaches that we have the ability to act and annulled something that we made hektish, she'im hektish behema, because if you sanctified an animal, the shachta b'chutz, and then you ended up slaughtering it outside the Beit HaMikdash, ba'achar nishal alah, and then you've now slaughtered the animal, and you're going to be punished. And so what you do is you go and you ask a yachid mumcha, an expert in the topic, and have it annulled. So potter, well, then you will not be chayiv a korban if you did this by accident. The kevan sheyesh she'ela, because there is this ability to annul a vow with respect to hektish, ki'ilu lo hekdisha miolam. It's as if you never made it hektish in the first place. Dummy. It's comparable to the chacham oker haneder mi'ikaro, because as we saw, a chacham when he annuls a vow, it's as if it never happened. Because why is it only putter, not putter? It's a good question. Not sure. Not sure why, especially since we're using the language of mutter life. So maybe there is some ramification. That's an excellent question. I don't know the answer. Okay. So now I have to do some thinking about that. It could be that the putter here is mutter. It's occasionally we say putter when we mean mutter, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so now that we've all that we've done, what we've done is we've explained how we know 3 judges can annul a vow, and how we know that 1 expert can annul a vow. But we've got a problem, because Lebeit Shammai da'amar ein she'ela behekdesh. So Beit Shammai says that this last law that we just learned is not in fact true. That he says you can't undo hektish. So Rashei Hamatos Diksiv. So now we have a question. What do we do with our Zera Shava? We had a Zera Shava that taught us about the one judge and the one expert and the three judges, and in one direction, and taught us about the ability to ask question to annul the making of something hektish in the other direction. So if there's no ability to annul hektish consecration, well then how do we understand the Rashi Hamatos? So Rashi Hamatos b'ksiv b'shchutei chutz l'mai hilchos. So what do we teach with that? So Beis Shammai leis l'hu gzeira shava. It must be that Beis Shammai doesn't hold of this gzeira shava in the first place. Well, if we don't hold of the gzeira shava in the first place, well then how does he learn all the lessons that we just learned today? Again, namely the fact that the language needs to be specific for the chacham and the Baal, and the fact that the one or three, both one expert and three judges can work. So so we're going to go back to first principles and say, what do we learn from Zahadavar? So again, Lomar Chacham Matir Be'ein Baal Matir, Baal Meper Be'ein Chacham Matir. So we can learn the language. We don't need the Gzeira Shava to tell us that only the husband can use the language of revocation, and only a chacham can use the language of annulment. But Zehadavar b'shchutei chutz l'mai ksiv, and what do we learn from Zehadavar that's written in connection with slaughtering animals, slaughtering sacrifices outside the Beit HaMikdash? Lomar al hashchita chayev ve'ein chayev al hamalika. That Zehadavar again is being specific. When it says shchutei chutz, it means shchita dafka. So although the slaughtering of birds in the Beit HaMikdash is done through the usage of a very sharp fingernail, which is referred to as malika, that malika is not considered shchita for the violation of the prohibition of shchutei chutz, of slaughtering a sacrifice outside the Beit HaMikdash. So that's with respect to Zehadavar. So we've covered the fact that the husband and the expert can't use each other's language. But when it came to the ability for three regular judges to add, that we needed the Gzeira Shava. So how does Beis Shammai learn that? So Nafkalahu the Rav Asi Bar Nassan. So we're going to learn it the way Rav Asi Bar Nassan learns it from the following Sukim. Diksiv. Okay, so we start with the first pasuk. We start with the pasuk that is in Parshas Pinchas. Vayidaber Moshe es Moadei Hashem. No, I'm sorry. That's just sure. Yeah, this is in Vayikra in Parshas Emor. Vayidaber Moshe es Moadei Hashem el Bnei Yisrael. That when it comes to the holidays, V'tanya Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer Moadei Nemru Below Nemru Shabbos Bereshis Imahen. That over there it talks about the holiday in Parshas Emor. It talks about all the holidays, but it doesn't talk about Shabbos. Now, the truth is, we're going to ask that question in a moment. But that's we're going to just read the brisa as it says. Ben Azai Omer Moadei Nemru Below Nemar Parshas Nedarim Imahen. And in addition, when it says the holidays, it doesn't talk about Nedarim with it. Well, of course, the answer to that, the response to that is that's not true either, because when we have Parshas Pinchas, which is where all the holidays are, immediately after that it references Nedarim. Because Parshas Matzah, the following parsha, is the parsha that begins with Nedarim. So Rav Asi Bar Nassan Kashalei Hamasnisa. So Rav Asi Bar Nassan had a real problem with this brisa, because again it says that Shabbos isn't written in connection with the holidays, but it is. It says that the Nedarim aren't written with the holidays, but they are. So what's the story? So Asal and Narda Lakamei Rav Sheshes. He was really bothered by it. So we went to Narda to ask Sheshes below Ashkei, and he didn't find him there. Asav Abasrei L'Mechoza. So he followed him to Mechoza. And finally he found him. So Amrle, he said, Moadei Hashem Nemru Below Nemru Shabbos Bereshis Imahen. That's what the brisa says. V'Haksiv Shabbos Imahen. But Shabbos is written in them. V'Su Moadei Hashem Nemru Below Nemru Parshas Nedarim Imahen. But it is right next to it. So I don't understand. So Amarle Hachitan. So we need to back up and we need to recognize that when we say, as we turn to Ayin Chedem Abed, it is not the meaning of this brisa is not about the literal connection of these topics. It is about a religious significance of these topics, that there is a difference from a halachic standpoint, and that was what the Baraisa was trying to say. The Brisa used essentially as a method, a statement that sounds like it's talking about the psukim, but in fact it's talking about the halachot. And so what does Rav Sheshis say back to him? He says, Moadei Hashem srichim kiddush beistin. That when it comes to the holidays, to all of our holidays, they are all based on the lunar month. And so as a result, because they're based on the lunar month, and the lunar month requires sanctification of Beistin, so that's true with respect to them. But Shabbos, which when it comes to Shabbos, it doesn't require that. The seventh day of the week is the seventh day of the week every week. It doesn't make a difference whether anybody says anything or does anything. Yeah, exactly. Well, Saturday is the last day of the week according to the Jewish law. And so every Shabbos, it's the seventh day of the week. So, so that's with respect to Shabbos and the holidays. And with respect to the holidays and Nedarim, so Moadei Hashem Srichim Mumcha. So when it comes to the holidays, you need an expert. In order to sanctify the month, you need to have an expert going through the analysis. And thankfully, the experts, when they set up the calendar, set up the Jewish calendar so that we're based on what they're doing. We don't have a mumcha today, as I said. So as a result, we're utilizing the sanctification that they set up, and we're effectively continuing that process.
Like Passover is coming in April.
Yeah, Passover is coming over. And so in order to celebrate Passover, we're going to need to sanctify. The Passover falls in the month of Nisan, and so Nisan needs to be sanctified. We need to know when the first day of Nisan is, so that way we know when the 15th day of Nisan is, because only when we know when the 15th day of Nisan will we be able to celebrate Pesach.
Did that?
I think it was Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, but I got to double check. I can't. I'm blanking on the what? Oh, Hillel did it. I think it was Hill. I can't remember. I'm sorry. I'll double check. It's definitely Googleable. I'll check and get back to you tomorrow.
Did this a long time ago.
Yes, exactly. A long time ago they set up these months. Exactly right. The aim parshat Nedarim Srichim Mumka. But when it comes to vows, so the two statements in the Brisa were Shabbos, where holidays are not like Shabbos, and holidays are not like Nedarim. And so when it comes to holidays not being like Shabbos, it's because Shabbos doesn't need anybody to say when it's going to come, and holidays are not like Nedarim because Ein Parshat Nedarim Tzrikin Mumka. Because when it comes to, although holidays need an expert is not needed when it comes to Nedarim, right? Because Afilu based in Hedyotot. Because you can even have a beit-din of 3 regular people, and so this is the basis. This lesson that it's interesting that it says Nafkalahu mid Rav Asi Bar Nachman, that this was a lesson learned from in connection with Rav Asi Bar Nachman, as opposed to saying that it was learned from Rav Sheshis. Rav Sheshis is the one who taught it, but it highlights that when you ask a good question, that sometimes that good question is really the source of the learning. And so as a result, it emphasizes the importance of the questions that are asked. So
we don't ask for Sheshis.
Well, Rav Sheshis is proof of this is the Brisa. He's explaining the Brisa. So the Brisa. That's a good question. So, but the Brisa is basically is teaching on some level, it seems like a halacha l'moshe misinai, that this is something that a tradition that came down, that and it was phrased in a way that would help us remember, because of course it says because what's written is the exact opposite of what's true, and that gets you thinking, okay, so what is it? What's the aspect of the holidays that is not like Shabbos and the holidays that is not like Nedarim? So, all right. So, V'haba Parshas Nedarim Rashi Amatos. So, in second, so what about the fact that when it comes to Nedarim, it is written with the word Rashi Hamatot. So that's the heads of the tribes. So Amar Chista v'Yitema Rabbi Yochanan v'Yachid Mumcha, as we cited earlier. That's what teaches us that a Yachid Mumcha is sufficient. So we now have a basis for both a Yachid Mumcha and 3 judges, both according to Beit Hillel and according to Beit Shammai. So whether or not you learn the Dereshava of Zadavar, we have a basis to rely on 1 judge or 3 judges, or 1 expert judge or 3 regular judges for Hataras Nedarim. And again, of course, in our day, we just use the 3 regular judges. So Amar Rabbi Chanina. So now we're going to. So let's. So now this. This all. We're finished with this topic, and now we're ready to talk about something new. So the Gemara is now going to talk about the meaning of silence, and certainly we've seen already that silence is that if you're silent for the day, right? If the father or the husband hears about the vow and is silent for the rest of that day, well, then the vow becomes a valid vow. But silence can have thought behind it. And the question is, does the thought behind the silence actually matter? And that's what we're going to talk about now. And this is especially important because what we saw earlier is that according to Beit Hillel, you don't even actually have to verbalize your annulment of your revocation, the husband's revocation of the vow. You could just think it. And so now we're going to see some of the ramifications, a potential ramification of that fact. So Amar Rabbi Chanina. So and let me just note 4 different kinds of silence. One is a person wants to confirm the neder immediately. He's really, his silence is, I'm not going to confirm it, but I really want it confirmed. And so I'm going to be silent, and that's it. So that's 1. 2 is, I don't know, I'm sorry. Well, 2 is I want the neder confirmed, but I specifically want it to be confirmed at the end of the day when my silence will trigger it. The 3rd is, well, I really want to revoke this, but I'm kind of annoyed at my wife, and we're going to talk about this case in particular, but I'm kind of annoyed at my wife, and so I want to annoy her back. And so I'm not going to say anything about it now, but my plan is I'm going to revoke it. And then the final case is that you just had nothing in mind. You haven't really given it any thought, and you're silent. So those are the 4 kinds of silence. Again, confirming now, confirming at the end of the day, actually intending to revoke, and don't know yet. Those are the 4 kinds of silence. So Rabbi Chanina is going to talk about the 3rd of them. So Amar Rabbi Chanina hashosek al manas lameka. If you are silent in order to distress the person, and the Ran says 1, 2, 3, 6 lines up in the Ran, middle of the line. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan hashosek al manas lameka. Today lahaknit ishto, you're trying to annoy your wife. Because she'll think that you're intending to confirm the vow. But he doesn't really intend to do that. But he's going to revoke the vow later, but he hasn't done it yet. So Rabbi Chanina says, listen, if in fact the person is thinking that he's going to annul the vow later, well then he has even 10 days to annul that. So why? Because the implication is, well, and 1 more time to annoy her, but the implication is that on some level the revocation that he does in his mind of saying I'm planning to revoke is sufficient to do something and effectively extend the deadline. Now, we're going to begin, and today we're going to ask question number 1 on it, and we're not going to be successful. In the end, we're going to be successful in questioning it. And so as a result, if this is a distressing rule for you, know that the challenge will eventually be successful, but the first challenge is not going to be. So Masav Rava asks on this situation, and he says, Amasai Amru Mesa. So we had a brisa that we've seen, I think, a couple of times now, where the brisa tells us when if a husband dies, again, in the case of Nedarim Orasa, which is of course the name of our perek, when that the right to annul, to keep doing that, the right to revoke the vow, the right to be made for the vow, transfers fully to the father. So and that same brisa tells us that there are situations where, because of the actions or inactions of the husband and the timing of his death, nothing transfers to the father, meaning the vow is definitely going to be considered confirmed and cannot be revoked. So let's take a look. So Amasai, when is it that Amasai Amru Meis Habal Nisrokna Rishus Lav? When is it that we say that when the husband dies, that the father inherits the full permission? So Bisman Shalo Shama Habal, in a situation where the husband hasn't heard it. Oh, Shishama, and here the language changes a little bit. Behavior, and says, or he heard about it and he annulled it. I'm sorry, and he revoked it. Oh, Shishama Umeis Bobayo, or he heard about it, and the Shasuk, and he was quiet about it, Umeis Bobayo, and he died on that same day. So Aval. All right, so those are the situations where the husband has the full right. But, and what's relevant for us, Aval Shama B'Kayim, but if he heard about it and he confirmed it, or Shama B'Sheta Umeis Bayom Shel Acharav, or if the husband heard about it and the husband didn't die until the next day, so the silence was sufficient to confirm the vow, well then then he can't, then the father will not have the ability to revoke the vow. So my lav b'shozik almanas will make it. Maybe this silence, that the fact that the guy was silent was because he wanted to annoy her. So shouldn't if this brisa is talking about silence, maybe it's talking about that level of silence. So naturally the answer is lo. No, maybe we're talking about a silence where his intention was to confirm the vow. Well, what's second? Meaning either version 1 or version 2. Either his intention is to confirm now or to confirm at the end of the day. Well, then what's the difference between that and a desire to actually confirm? So so it must be, so we're going to say that in fact, this situation is where the husband was silent without any specific intention, which is the fourth of the 4 possible cases that we mentioned in the introduction. And so as a result, that's where we're talking about, where if the man was silent and had no special intention, if it comes to the next day, well, then the father will no longer be able to revoke. But maybe Rav Shesh's statement would still be true, that if you intend to revoke, but you have not yet done so, and the reason that you have not done so is because you wanted your silence to annoy your wife, well then maybe you will have an extended period of time to engage in that revocation because you've already had in your mind that intention to revoke. So we will see additional challenges, God willing, to this tomorrow. And not only will we see that, and we'll see those challenges be successful, but we'll also finish the 10th chapter of Nedarim and begin the 11th and final chapter, final perek of Nedarim. So as a result, stay tuned for tomorrow's daf.
David, what do you think?
All right, hold on just a second. I'm going to turn off the recording.